So I shall introduce the speakers for today and the panelists for today. So we've got Anjali Pindoria. Anjali is a QS at the family firm Contracts. I first met her a few years ago at a talk she gave after completing her undergraduate degree. She examined the phenomenally low number of BME employees in construction. And even now, I was looking at this up last night, Anjali is part of a group that represents 0.6 or possibly less of the industry, despite that same group making up around 7% of the UK population. Anjali's a champion of diversity and an outstanding speaker. She's an official role model for UK Construction Week and a member of the CIOB's London Novus, as well as the Worshipful Company of Constructors. The next speaker, who we hope to have on, he's struggling with his technology a little bit, but hopefully we'll get hold of him, is Elvin Box. Elvin is well known to many of you as the charismatic chair of London's Constructing Excellence Club. He's a well-known figure in the industry. Elvin started off on the tools many years ago and was for a while, he was the director of business improvement and innovation at Mace. He now works as an organisational development consultant, and Elvin has a particular perspective on mental health, which hoping we can get him on with his microphone and camera in a second, and if not, I'll make him phone in and he can speak to us on the phone. But it'd be really good to get his perspective, because he's certainly been through the mill, I think it's fair to say. And then finally, David Barnes, Daisie Rees-Evans, both communications and policy research experts working for the Chartered Institute of Building. David and Daisie worked together on the preparation of the CIOBs. Ah, there he is. Gotcha. Thanks, Elvin. Okay. Elvin's in. The only thing I need to do now is I'll turn my camera off so Elvin can have his camera on. So I'll do that now. Hopefully you can all still hear me. And if at some point Elvin gets his camera on, we'll be away. So David and Daisie worked together on the preparation of the CIOB's latest report, which examines mental health in the built environment. The report highlighted some staggering statistics. 1 in 4 people in construction will consider suicide, and 91% of people will feel overwhelmed during the course of a year. That's marvellous. We've got Elvin's beautiful face in front of us all. So, right, first question to Anjali. How have the last few months been for you and Contracts and other subcontractors you work with, and how are companies with little or no cash flow managing to get through the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, the last few months have been busy, to say the least. I mean, just like most of the built environment, we've stayed operational throughout even the lockdown. And like most people, it's just about adapting to the new norm for us, reviewing how we build and still have the same outcomes whilst maintaining social distancing and also government guidelines. Digitally, we're quite fortunate that as an SME, we do have a really good cloud setup. So we've been able to work from home where required. But the only difference is the way we do our work. So instead of going to sites to do pre-cons and final account meetings, these have now been done digitally through the likes of Teams and Zoom. Initially, it was quite difficult for us because a lot of the suppliers we use did shut through COVID in line with government guidelines, but we still had contractual obligations with the client to fulfill our projects. So it's just been about really right now reviewing those project programs and seeing how we can make up for lost time where necessary. And also the construction process has naturally just slowed down due to the restrictions on site. So it's just been about how we can adapt and all work together with collaboration and integration. In terms of how companies with little or no cash flow have been managing to sustain, I think some companies have been looking to prioritize spending with the aim to cut short-term costs, for example, using the benefits of the job retention schemes through furlough or reducing unnecessary overheads right now. One could be reviewing your accreditations. Do you necessarily need all your accreditations right now, or can some of them be put on hold throughout this period? And not many subcontractors or SMEs actually are cash rich. And we need to understand and acknowledge that typically this cash flow is actually tied up in materials, other project costs, and even retentions. So it could be difficult to pay out and continue operating business if the process has naturally slowed down. So making use of SME government funding through more favourable approaches could be a way to help bridge those short-term cash flow issues. Another way is reviewing payment terms with suppliers. So if you're able to renegotiate some payment terms right now, especially throughout this short period where you have good credit history with suppliers you've used over the years, then that's another way that, you know, you can help reduce sending all that cash flow out straight away.
Real. Okay. Thanks, Dave, Anjali. Elvin, we kind of lost your face, but hopefully you're still there. How have you been dealing with coronavirus challenges, particularly the constructing excellence side of things and the kind of all the activities that you would normally be doing, the networking, the seminars and all of that sort of stuff? And how about your clients as well? Have you seen anything particularly innovative going on from there?
Yeah. Well, with the London Constructing Excellence Club, everything's digital. We were a bit relatively slow to the party. We've done 2 online conferences now. We actually we repeated the first one purely because it was so popular. So the greatest challenge, is that though both the conferences went very, very well. The presenter was extremely good, all about coronavirus and force majeure and insurance, all extraordinarily relevant stuff. The overwhelming factor is that it's not going to be face to face, and the thing, the 2 events have lacked is networking with everybody together. So in answer to the question, since lockdown, I've not used public transport since lockdown at all. Everything with my clients and with Constructing Excellence has been digital. And I can only echo what has already been said. There's grave concern about cash flow. I had some discussions yesterday with people saying actually, well, they're very fortunate. They've agreed to take a pay cut as opposed to, sorry, but we're going to have to lay you off. So has that helped?
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. I was just thinking, do you think that the lack of ability to interface in that kind of face-to-face way, the kind of events that you organise and that London and Constructing Excellence around the country, that inability to have that face-to-face contact, do you think that will stifle business growth and abilities for businesses to find new work?
There's a good point to it, because everything is based on trust. And there's far more trust can be attained through actually being in the presence of somebody, because there's so many things you can't unconsciously get your head around over a webcam. And it is the interaction that happens in a normal networking situation face to face is extraordinarily difficult to create online. And everybody else has found that, but it's very, very difficult to create the chatty conversations that go on, and naturally people don't interrupt, but they say it reminds them of something. Keep having to take your turn nullifies a natural flow of natural conversation. Yeah,
that's it. And I do think, I was thinking that earlier. It's difficult. We can have these sort of online coffees and online catch-ups, but they really aren't the same, are they? It's not quite the same as having a get together. I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to the mental health issue, or touch on the mental health issues before we come to David and Daisie. So just the publication of another set of working guidelines yesterday from the CLC, and this week we've had the news that government's going to allow the construction sites to work longer hours. Elvin, do you think that's a positive move? Do you think that might have an impact on mental health?
What I would have preferred them to have said is that there is an expectation that people will still work the same length of shift, but it will be done across a longer opening period. The worst thing that can happen for mental health is that people rock up at 8 and it's still there at 10. That's not going to be good. But as long as it is used that you have a shift and there's shift patterns, there's an opportunity. I think it is a very useful step forward, because I was reading that production is down between 30 and 40% because of social distancing. So in answer to that, yes, it's good to extend the duration, but only if it is used and people are strict with their shift patterns. I really wouldn't recommend, I don't think anyone should be recommending people, really and truthfully, 10 hours is it. So max. I don't know what anybody else was, but yeah, so I hope that helps.
Yeah, I know a few weeks ago we were chatting to DJ out in Hong Kong. He was saying that, you know, the extension of the site hours, well, I don't know what their rules are on site hours, to be fair, in Hong Kong, but certainly they'd split their shifts. So there were teams coming in separate groups, which I guess if that works, that would work well. But yeah, you certainly wouldn't want people working for longer hours, would you?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so moving on to really focus and get down on the detail of the mental health issues. You know, Daisie and David, obviously you've done a lot of work on. I hope some of the people on the call have had a chance to look at the CIOB's report, because it's a really good piece of work, I think. So, Daisie and David, can you give us a little bit of background to the CIOB report and its purpose, findings, aims, all of that sort of detail?
Yeah, so as you know, construction has improved its record on health and safety over the last 10 to 15 years. But people's mental health and well-being has been somewhat neglected. We now see workers sort of more at risk of committing suicide than falling from heights. And so while strides have been made in physical safety, mental health risks have not really received the same level of attention until more recently. The president of the CIOB, Professor Charles Egbu, he actually made it his priority during his presidency to raise awareness of poor mental health within the industry. He actually strongly believes that to truly be a professional of the CIOB and other professional bodies in the industry, that you need to have an understanding of the wider sort of workforce and actually care for them. It doesn't matter if you have a subcontractor on a project that's there for a day or two, you need to be understanding what their needs are and actually caring for the workforce on the project entirely. So our main aims of the research report was to actually look at sort of what the current state is for the mental health in the construction industry, and also what sort of factors on the work sites kind of contribute towards more poor mental health. So as you kind of mentioned, about 97% of people in 2019 have actually experienced stress at least once in that year. And the factors that mainly contributed towards that were time pressures, unrealistic deadlines, too much work to do. I mean, there were other things as well. I mean, we spend almost a third of our time at work, and the nature of construction means that we work on temporary office sites and accommodation. And typically we also see poor and inadequate toilet facilities. And this has come up in our research, but also other research that other people have done, that inadequate poor toilet facilities is actually a really key stressor. We found 71% of manual workers found that this was really stressful for them. We also found that 1 in 4 construction workers had thought about suicide within 2019 and towards the end of 2018 as well. So this is a really key issue for the industry. And what's surprising for us was that 71% of individuals had received no training on mental health awareness at all over the past 3 years. So there are some things that industry can be doing, and raising awareness is a really good start for us, I think, in talking about this issue. But we've also, in our report, we included some recommendations for both industry to kind of improve, and for government and for professional bodies like ourselves to really make sure that this mental health is not a silent crisis, and that we start working towards improving mental health in the industry.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's raising that awareness and starting to move things in the right direction. And it's amazing how those simple things like welfare facilities, which you would think are not that difficult. I can remember, you know, I've been out to sites where there's been filthy porta cabins and pretty grim toilet facilities and stuff, and with one contractor, and then another contractor not too far away, another friend of mine, will have a site facilities that are really quite palatial, and it's really strange how there's such a disparity across the industries. Anjali, obviously you're well known to most of us as a champion for diversity and raising awareness of the need for the industry to increase diversity as well. Do you think diversity has a role to play in this sort of arena? Would a more diverse workforce be a more healthy workforce, do you think? Oh, you've muted yourself, I think.
Sorry about that. I was muted. There was a busy office behind me, but yeah, I totally believe that that diversity does have a role to play in the mental health arena. Diversity has a lot to do with acceptance, and not just diversity of your appearance, but different factors and attributes like background, skills, languages. So if you don't feel you belong because of one of those attributes, or you naturally feel like you're an outcast in a certain situation or an environment, or feel that you're having to fit a mold, then yes, that is going to impact on your mental health. And I think mental health is all about you as a person. And if you feel like you cannot be yourself because of the lack of diversity around you, then that's going to be a problem, not necessarily now, but maybe further down the line. So naturally, yes, a more diverse workforce would lead to a healthier workforce, as you might be able to find more like-minded and relatable people too. I mean, if you find people that have a better understanding to your cultural obligations or norms that you conform to, then maybe that will take a massive weight off of your shoulders. And we say it all the time, when we are all in uneasy situations and we see someone in the same position as us, we all say, oh, well, thank God I'm not the only one. And that really does cement how, if we find people who are more diverse and like-minded like us, it could naturally lead to a healthier and happier mind.
Cool. Yeah. And also, one of the questions that I thought of and wonder if it makes a difference, or I think actually, yeah, it was, how do you feel, is there any difference between subcontractors and main contractors in the way they tackle mental health?
Yeah, I think definitely. I don't think subcontractors deal with mental health as well. Firstly, the support system is much smaller, and you don't have a big outreach of people that you can go to, not just for work-related problems, but also personal issues too. And if you don't have that setup where you have people who might be trained or mental health first aiders around you because of the size of your business, or the company can't afford to invest money into initiatives, then you could feel like you are more alone, or that mental health is more of an issue. I mean, when you look at subcontractors alone, the kind of stress strains that they go through are more payment related, pressures through, delivery, which is something that they might feel they can't really speak out about. Otherwise, it could hamper or dampen really relationship with contractors. And I mean, if you look at our industry, 90% is subcontractors. And as of December 2019, there were 343,000 construction businesses. If we take 90% of those figures, which is 308,700 businesses, are we saying that group is vulnerable to mental health and problems because they don't have very much support or that system around them?
Brilliant, thanks. Yeah. Okay, so if we can come back to Elvin, where's he gone now? He keeps disappearing on me.
Back in a minute.
There he is.
There you go.
You're scaring me when you do that. Okay. So Elvin, I know you've got some particular experiences from, obviously you've worked in the industry for many years and got some experiences. I mean, would you like to share with us some of the things that you've come across in the industry over the years?
Yeah, the biggest thing that occurred to me, or happened to me, I should say, was when I was in my early 20s, and that's when things really were rough on construction sites. And tragically, I got on his second day. He joined on the Monday, and on the Wednesday afternoon, straight after lunch, a young guy, probably about 24, I think he was, fell 6 floors to his death through a hoist tower. That was it will never go away, and nor should it. I think I need counselling if I can forget about it. That was the harshest situation I've ever been in, and an interesting thing, even though I was the calmest person around, I was dealing with the health and safety executive. Everything around me took its toll. And about 3 weeks later, I was diagnosed with, it was mild depression. And I've always said, if that's mild, I wouldn't want a full stop. And that was back in the days when there wasn't any counselling whatsoever. So that was a difficult period. More recently, my experience, while still working in construction, was being diagnosed with prostate cancer back in 2016, in the summer of 2016. Completely different life experiences, but both took a heavy toll on my mental health. And one thing that we haven't actually mentioned is that when you have a heavy bout of mental health issues, you're never quite going to be the same again. My experiential learning, I've worked with one particular guy, and he says that he had a severe breakdown on a project, severe breakdown. And he says without his medication, he can't survive. Without a structure, he cannot survive. So it's one of the things we need to look at is the immense pressure certain individuals are under on a construction project. And he said he'll never be the same again. For me, my experience is that it's taken its toll, but not to that extent. I'll give you, for instance, back when I was in my early 20s, I was put on what's then called Valium, but it had to be a short course and I had to get over it. Prostate cancer, completely different, but it did teach me that, because I was hiding a lot. I was hiding my anger. And that's one of the issues that when you talk about mental health, is what are the telltale signs that someone has a problem. I use the Movember Foundation, 5 things to be looking out for. Are they doing less of what they enjoyed to your knowledge? Are they not showing up on time? Not actually showing up for stuff? Do they seem to be less interested in their appearance? Any self-destructive behavior? Is it too much drinking? Do you know if they're taking drugs? And also, are they getting to anger quicker? And so for me, I explained to people the first time out in my 20s, I wasn't taking care of myself. And it was obvious because I would get very angry that something was completely wrong. With prostate cancer, I look fine, but the one thing, if you were in an area where I wasn't controlling everything, I would get extraordinarily angry. So the things I've learned from all of this is that, as been said, is that you really got to have your senses about is something wrong with an individual. And you never know what has sparked them, what's created a problem, but you've got to do everything. If something's nagging at you that something's not right, you should shout up. Can I give you the perfect example? We were working with a subcontractor some years ago, and regular contact with one of the guys, and it dawned on me, and I said to one of the actual project manager, I said, won't say his name, I said, Mark, have you noticed he is so much slimmer than he was? And we just went across him and had a cup of coffee. I said, why have you lost all the weight? And then he broke into tears and he explained that his daughter had been in a near fatal car crash. So spending a half an hour with him and crying with him as well, it made all the difference to the guy, because as the job was finishing, he came up and hugged me and said, "You've got soul." He said, "I needed that. I just needed someone to talk to, because I didn't know who to talk to." Does that help, Stuart?
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think it's really interesting. And something I've noticed, over the years, is the number of people who find that sort of talking makes a difference. You don't think it does. It's very odd, isn't it? But I know, I went to a CIOB dinner actually, where Simon Weston, the survivor of the Falklands War, was there.
Very good. I've seen him. Yeah,
and he just seems to survive on the basis of telling everyone what happened to him in the Falklands, and he's been doing it for years and years and years. And it's just, that seems to be one of his ways of tackling the horrific experience he went through. So just to round up, David, I think if we come back to you guys, and say, just have a look at what recommendations the CIOB has got for tackling mental health, and what's come out of the report, I guess.
Sure. So there is a series of recommendations in the report, and obviously these are for industry, government, but also professional bodies to consider. I mean, I think one of the things that's worth noticing, obviously with coronavirus going on at the moment, is there's much more focus on online courses and things like that. So that's one action that we'll be taking away about looking at potential MOOC around it, so a massively online course that's actually more internationally applicable, because I think mental health means different things to different people depending on where you are in the world, for example. And that's one thing we need to be very much aware of, that we're an international organisation in that regard. I mean, I think the report's really thrown up some interesting things, particularly around kind of hygiene rates, as hygiene on site, particularly with coronavirus happening at the moment. There's bound to be some big concerns about, the health, sanitary products, things like that actually happening on site. I mean, I remember we were speaking just before the call about one of the toilets, or female toilets on site, actually being converted into like the specialist zone for it, which it shouldn't be the case. And hygiene needs to be much more on the agenda, particularly if people are going to have the confidence to go back to work during this difficult time. I mean, there's a huge kind of economic and productivity case around mental health from an employer point of view. I mean, I don't want to go into those kind of statistics at the moment, but I see it very much as being a professional, really, that we all have a duty to look out for one another. And I think, although, again, we're not saying it should be the bigger contractors that have to put all these processes in place to look after their subcontractors. However, there just needs to be that more recognition happening on site about what's going on, and awareness of spotting some of the poor signs. I mean, I think it's a really positive thing now that mental health is being spoken about a lot more, and we're starting to see more mental health first aiders. But now we need to take it to that next stage and see about how those mental health first aiders are really working, what benefit they're having, and actually learning lessons. I mean, I think on the final kind of points, there's some really good case studies in the report that I think it's worth reading. I mean, I think it was Seddon, some of the things that happened on similar experiences to actually what you were just mentioning there, but also Thames Tideway, about how they're on the Britain's healthiest workforce they featured in, and some of the measures that they've really implemented. But I think final thought is really what we're noticing through our kind of parliamentary and public affairs work is construction's being seen as a really key industry to this kind of recovery around coronavirus now. And really, let's actually learn some of the lessons about how we can really make this an industry that people want to join and come into. As I say, there's lots of different recommendations in it, so I won't go into them all now, but it really requires a kind of collaborative effort there.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, David.